Yeah, we do that like every night. It's not my house, his.
Go and introduce yourself to her, please. Tell her that I want to see
You
her
want to
sit
study?
next to me. That'll be your,
Yeah,
it'll be her goal.
I think that's what I want to really use anyways for you.
Good evening. We'd like to welcome you to the Shenandoah Central School District's Board of Education Business Meeting with a focus on the budget hearing for 2017-2018. Let's start off with our Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Quick announcement, Mr. Delalo is not here. He has a family event that he is participating in Florida. And at this point, we'd like to turn it over to the public hearing on the budget. Good evening.
You're on now, you're fine. You're fine.
Put in $4 more for that.
Budget vote date this year is May 16th. Polls open at 7 a.m. and close at 9 p.m. And the vote is being held in the Guana Gymnasium. There are three items on the referendum. The first one is the 17-18 proposed budget. Second one is budget purchase resolution, and the third one is the board candidates with 2 seats being open. As we look at the budget comparisons for 16-17 and 17-18, you can see the adopted budget in 16-17 is 2.10%. This year in 17-18 it's 2.19%, so very much in line. We also compared these to the tax cap based budget, so if we had followed the tax cap, this is what our budgets could be. In 16-17 it would have been 2.12, and in this year 17-18 it would have been 2.60. So we're well under the cap in both cases. Comparing our budget proposal this year to the 5-year budget increase, on average, we're about 2.05%, and this year, the 17-18 budget is 2.19%. So right in that same average area as we have been in the last 5 years. We always provide a 3-part budget distribution. As you can see, between administrative, programmatic, and capital, our percentages stay pretty common. Oh, I'm sorry, did I miss one?
I think we just had a different sequence.
I might have the wrong sequence. Well, let's take a look at the state aid. Foundation aid is the aid that we look to that runs on formula and is supposed to create some equity across schools. This year, our foundation aid goes up about $740,000. The other aids that you see are expense-driven aids. So as a matter of course, when our expenses go up, our aid goes up and vice versa. So our total aid this year goes up $1.1 million. The adopted budget and from last year to this year, you can see we just compared 2.1% to 2.19%. Tax levy limit would have allowed us to increase our levy 2.97% this year. The initial property taxes and budget levy was 2.39, but after the state aid increase that we got at the adoption of the state budget, we were able to drop the tax levy to 2.10%, which is about $1 million less than the tax cap would allow. And you can see last year we were under as well. Tax cap was only 0.78%, so we were a little bit closer to the cap last year at 0.74%. Proposition 1 is the budget at $169.9 million. Estimated tax levy is 2.1%, as we said, and for a property valued at $250,000, it would be a $47 increase for the year. That's excluding the impact of veterans tax exemption. That was passed in February, and we won't know the effect of that until July when we get the tax rolls and the impact of the tax exemptions. Proposition 2 is our bus replacement. We have 22 vehicles in our bus replacement plan, 21 of which are buses. We're on a 10-year replacement schedule on average, and we have about 206 buses. So 21 buses are scheduled for replacement, and we have one delivery truck that's also included in that number of 22. Cost is not to exceed $2.2 million. The last proposition is the Board of Education candidates. There are 2 seats up for election. All seats carry a 3-year term. And as we always say, the budget is not about dollars and cents. It's about quality programs for kids and providing ample opportunities for kids to become discerning leaders. Are there any questions?
Just want to make one comment. After tonight, because technically by law, we could not have distributed the district newsletter until after the public hearing. And it's an odd sequence because the board actually adopts the budget in April, and by law, the hearing is in May, which is after the fact. I don't know what was the rationale behind that law, but it is the law. And also, the law constrains that the newsletter cannot be distributed until after the hearing. So starting tomorrow, about 35,000 newsletters will be mailed out. And the newsletter provide a pretty clear summary of what we call the value adds, new things to the budget, as well as some additional information pertaining to the tax cap impact and what we call, the state calls anyway, a tax report card, and some further details of the budget. So one of the things that we have been doing over the past several months with the board is going through all the pieces of the budget, so to speak. And so this presentation is really a recap of the budget in total, particularly trying to articulate the 3 resolutions that will be on the referendum on May 16th. And so clearly, if the public needs more information, a lot of information is on the district website. The community news has been doing several articles, as well as the Times Union and the Gazette over the past several weeks, and I anticipate they'll be doing some comparative articles over the next couple of days comparing Shen to other school districts, as well as the newsletter coming to the respective households. So lots of information. Obviously, our goal is to make sure that people make an informed decision on the 16th. Mrs. DeFisciani is going to just briefly, and we would like to actually ask the candidates just to actually come forward so we can actually see the candidates instead of stand up there. And 2 things. She's just going to read the bio. We have a very standard format that we have for bios for candidates, so we're sharing similar information, and so one person not favored by how and what information we share, so to speak. Secondly, Mrs. De La Rosa is in the audience. Megan, can you just wave if you don't mind, so people who see you are. Megan De La Rosa is the president of the Shenendehowa Teachers Association. On Thursday night, the association has invited all the candidates to meet the candidates night. It's typically in the past have been well attended. It's a great opportunity for the candidates to express their particular opinions, thoughts on certain things about the school district in a Q&A format. But more important, it's a great opportunity for the public to also hear and understand the respective positions of the candidates. So that's going to be Thursday in High School West Auditorium at 7 p.m. And I had misstated in another meeting. I said 6, it's at 7 p.m. So we're certainly looking forward to that opportunity again to hear from the candidates. And so tonight is just more of a brief introduction of the candidates, and also for board members to see who the candidates are, as well as the public, since we are being live streamed tonight as well. So it's a great opportunity for the public to see who the candidates are. So,
just so you know, even though we can't by law mail this newsletter out until after tonight, it has been posted on the website for a couple weeks, and we did announce to people that it was there and they could read it. 4 candidates are vying for the 2 seats on the school board. The following candidates submitted petitions with the required 52 signatures to run. They're listed in order that they'll appear on the ballot. Naomi Hoffman of Clifton Park is seeking her first term on the Board of Education. She was formerly employed as a manager of compliance and audit at Kitware.
So,
a
hold
lo-
on, Kelly, let Naomi come forward. And then we talk about it. She's here.
a local R&D software technology company. She has a bachelor's degree from SUNY Albany in accounting and a master's of business administration and MBA from SUNY Albany. She and her husband have 2 children who attend Shenendehowa. Alexandra Blaze. You two want to come on this side. Alexandra Blaze of Clifton Park is seeking her first term on the Board of Education. She's employed as Director of Public Policy at the Home Care Association of New York State. She has a bachelor's degree from SUNY Albany in psychology and a master's in public health, MPH, in community health and behavioral sciences from SUNY Albany. She and her husband have 2 preschool-aged children. Bill Casey. Bill, yeah, just come up this way so you're in the video. Yes, that's right.
I know that.
Bill Casey of Clifton Park is seeking his 5th non-consecutive term. He is a retired New York State Assistant Deputy Controller. He has a bachelor's degree from SUNY College at Plattsburgh in political science and completed graduate work in public administration at SUNY Albany. He and his wife have 2 children who attended Shenendehowa. Jennifer Gleason. Jennifer Gleason of Clifton Park is seeking her first term on the Board of Education. She was formerly employed as a legislative assistant with the New York State Thruway Authority. She has a bachelor's degree from John Carroll University in political science. She has 2 children who attend Shenendehowa.
So these are the 4 candidates to the Board of Education. So good luck.
Thank you for running.
So again, the Meet the Candidates Night sponsored by the Shenendehowa Teachers Association will be a great opportunity. I trust that all 4 candidates will be present. And I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. One, to really try to encourage the public, the listening public as well, people here to come to that forum. Because I kudos to the STA. They do a very good job of asking a wide variety of questions so they can get a true sense of the candidates. One, understanding of the district and understanding of them in terms of the value add that they bring to the board as a collective governing body. So again, thank you very much for your attendance tonight, and I hope that you stay for the remainder of the meeting. This is probably one of our shorter meetings, so don't think all the meetings are going to be like this. Don't be spoiled. And so we really appreciate your attendance. So if there's no additional question even if there are questions by the public related to the budget, we'd be more than happy to address those questions as well. Otherwise, I'll turn the meeting back to Mr. Presley.
Okay. Move over to adopting an agenda, but before we do that, I would like to ask the board if we can go to an executive session for about 15 minutes after, related to one of the topics we discussed on a previous executive session involving a personnel matter. Okay. So that, in addition to the current agenda, can I have a motion to adopt it? Mr. Casey, second. Mrs. Stevenson, all in favor? Okay. And now let's turn over to Board of Education comments and reports. So let's start off with Mrs. Stevenson.
I'm going to be brief tonight. Obviously, supported the budget, and we hope that we had just as many people that came out on April 4th come out on next Tuesday. That would be wonderful. And I would like to say best of luck to all the candidates and to our incumbent, Mr. Casey. I also want to, again, talk about the Green and White Gala that is on June 9th at the Glenn Sanders Mansion this year. At 6:30 it starts. We would love to see more community members there, as well as our administrators and our district. And we look forward to a great night. Music, dancing, great food by Mazzone, auctions, live, silent, great activity for all, and it's really a nice night out. So really, this is the one sole fundraiser for our Shenendehowa Education Foundation. So we hope to make it a good one.
Stephen, let me just add one comment to today. Mrs. DeFisciani issued, I should have said, the green and white information as well as the link, the pay online link, and also we'll be sending out, and maybe have already, SIS to all. So it probably went out to 10,000 different links. And it's important, the reason why I'm stressing this, for one, to let people know information is readily available to sign up is from that on Facebook and different links that we use as a school district as well as the district website. And just to put the foundation in context, the funds from the foundation comes directly back into the school district to support programs. So it's not one of those fundraisers where people wonder where do the funds go. The funds are back into the school district through a grant process that school employees can apply for respective grants to support a wide variety of things. Just to give one example, a very glaring example that people probably see every day and don't realize it, the Carillon Bell Tower in front of the high school, the big, what people call a clock tower, is actually a bell tower. The significance is of the Carillon bells that were once part of the one-room schoolhouse that made up Shen, is a foundation project. In fact, it was the first significant foundation project that, again, is something that we want to preserve the history of the school district, and the foundation, through their efforts, garnered the funds to do so. So this example of why this is important to the school district as a whole, to have wide community support and wide community participation. Plus, it's a fun time.
It's fun.
So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one other thing I just want to say thank you to Dr. Robinson and Kathy, who have been traveling around to all the PTA meetings and community-wide just to get the message out and to get our community participation on this budget vote on the 16th. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanna. Also, I would like to encourage people to get out and vote. As you know, it is very key that we have as much support as possible. Again, it would be nice to see a great turnout in support of our students and their education. In addition to that, and also meet the candidates. It's very important to hear the different perspectives from our candidates, and it is a great opportunity to meet them and get to know them even further. I had the privilege to attend the Science Honor Society induction ceremony, well, with some fellow board members, where we had hundreds of our brightest and most creative and curious students that were inducted into that National Society. It's actually Shen's Science Honor Society is one of the first in the Capital Region, so it's very exciting to have that prestigious honor. And again, to see so many kids are interested in the science field. And it just, again, it's always such a spectacular sight to honor the students and all that they do. So again, it was our privilege to be there. And that's really it for me. Also about the Green and White Gala, it is a great time, so I encourage people to be there. What's really great, and Deanna, I'm not quite sure, but usually we have a student presentation of some sort from a group, as well as Team 20. Are they going to be there again? Great. Team 20, just to see, again, our students in action, and to see a part of that, to see how the foundation has supported such efforts. But also we usually have a Shen Alumni Award as well, so to see it come full circle from current students to alumni, again, it's a great time as well. So I hope to see you all there.
So I should probably do the closing advertisement for that. I would say, somebody asked me today at the 25th year ceremony who was planning on going, what should I wear? And I said to her, wear comfortable shoes and be ready to dance, because Frank Roselli and his group have been the only band that we've had, and people have more fun on the dance floor, and you might get a shot of Dr. Robinson in a unique position. I can say that. But
I'm going to be in the auction. They're going to auction the Dance with Me. That's going to be the Dance with the Stars.
Don't we want to make money? For that, Mary. Don't we want to make money?
The other thing I do want to mention, it is that time of the year. I was at the Science National Honor Society, a great event. It is the time of the year when, Megan, I'm guessing that one of your questions always, because it has been consistent over the years, what's something that stands out during the last year for you? And for the board, I know I don't speak just for myself. This is the time of the year that the students come in and we do student awards. We're just talking about the senior awards night for people who were around before Don Flint was here. We did all the awards in one night, and 4.5 hours later, crawling out of a place. Don has reorganized that, and we do a senior night, and we do the underclassmen, and events like this. This is really what it's about in the end, is looking at not only looking at the faces of the kids, but, as a grandfather, looking out at the proud parents and grandparents, seeing that work and that pushing and that commitment made by these kids, because for every one of these things, this isn't a fly-by-night kind of operation. The National Honor Society recognition requires, there's a whole list of criteria they have to go through. The same for these awards, these scholarship awards. We have a very generous community, and it shows when we do these events. So I would just encourage people, if you've got students or neighbors who are in that, keep track of who's winning and congratulate them. There are a lot of smiles on a lot of faces when we're doing that, and that's what our business is about. That's all I have.
A couple of things. I won't expand any on Science National Honor Society, except to say that idea came forward from a student. From beginning to end, the student came forward and said we should do this, and so it was nice to see that work and the confidence that the students have in bringing that forward. It's Teacher Appreciation Week, so I want to say thank you so much to our teachers, and in keeping with that, PTA does an awful lot of work to recognize teachers this week in every building. They're also planning the transportation breakfast for bus drivers, and they did an excellent job with Founders Day and acknowledged a lot of people for the hard work that they do as volunteers in PTA in every single unit. So I want to acknowledge them as well. 25-year club reception this afternoon. In almost 9 years, every time I've had a few remarks to make, I've been diligently preparing, except for today, which just goes to show an old dog can learn new tricks. And nobody ran away crying, so, it's all good. And I also wanted just to bring attention someplace else. Now, that expression, character is what you do when nobody is watching, and Coach Clausen probably doesn't know that anybody's watching at this time of year, but there's an article about the fire that destroyed Holy Trinity's football storage area right before a big game, and so there's an article in the paper recently about how people across the capital region came to their aid, and almost at the end, and Shenendehowa's football coach Brian Clausen has adopted our team, inviting them to camp this summer. That's character.
That's great.
And I just really, we're not paying too much attention to football at the moment, but that stands out in the crowd, and I'm very proud to say that he's a Shen employee, so thanks to him.
The one thing I want to call out is for those of you that have kids in sports, I don't know if you've noticed the condition of our fields. About 3 years ago, the district commendably took on a project where they cordoned off parts of fields for a year and said, nobody's going to use that, we're going to rehab it, we're going to grow the grass. And there were a lot of people that complained. There was a lot of people saying, what are you doing? Now we don't have enough fields as it is. If you go out on those fields and look at those fields today, they are immaculate. My kids play lacrosse, and we were out on a soccer field, and a few years ago, there was dust bombs everywhere. And it's amazing how that little bit of preventative work up front has done, 2 and 3 years down the road. So I think that was, again, it was something that could have been considered questionable at the time, given the lack of area that we have for sports. But in the long run, it really paid off. So that's a testament to the district. So thank you for that. That's my comment.
Okay. I'm glad we all mentioned awards, because we have 2 awards for board members that we'd like to present tonight. We get from the New York State School Boards Association awards for people that have done leadership training on the board. So the first person we'd like to recognize is Christine Rajat, who earned 75 points in leadership development training. And the other board member that attended and participated, Mr. William Casey, who earned 150 points.
Nice,
As I listened to all these great comments, I realized that we're a very blessed district because of things like this, budget where we're managing a lot of moving pieces, whether it be how people pay into it, how we support programs, and we're always coming up with and developing very consistent programs that meet the needs that are coming forward. This is bringing resources to meet needs. This is developing an environment where students participate and bring forward unique clubs that add value to their life. But I also am very concerned about this budget because I think we're in a watershed time. Our national government is going to be operating much differently than it has in the past. The mentality out of Washington, D.C. is to deconstruct. Okay, deconstruction means we're going to end certain programs. Okay, some of them will be in education, and we have to look at in our budget on a national basis, about 3% plus comes from national government, okay, in terms of grants for special needs students. I can't tell you or predict that will be here. Every year we review it at the beginning of the year during the fall, and you know, it's usually Dr. Wood, and we kind of say, well, are these going to be around? And it's usually, yeah, we think so, okay, but it's subject to change, okay? But now we have a national government that's looking at deconstructing things like that. And those are dollars that we've counted on. We also have a national government that wants to deconstruct healthcare, that brings dollars into the state, that wants to deconstruct a lot of programs for the environment, and wants to deconstruct a lot of things for transportation. You name it, it's up for grabs. Okay, it's up to be knocked off. The only thing that's expected to go up is national defense and immigration control. Okay, only a couple things. Everything else is dropping. And what this state has decided to do is they're sort of tipping their hand is that if money is taken away from the state, what will happen? It's going to be taken away proportionally from everybody. Okay, so as we look at this budget, as you think about it, as you look through what we mailed to you, I ask you to realize we've crossed a watershed. The money that comes to us nationally and from the state may not be there. And I'm bringing this up. I apologize to kind of bring this into more of a foreboding tone, but I think that is the tone that we have to adapt as we talk about the land sale comments. We put this in both as an information item where I think we can discuss in detail for what the community has asked for us to do, so we can be responsive to some of the concerns to move quickly on resolving this. At the same time, no one else here, no one in the town, no one in various stakeholder groups is expected to fight for education dollars. Okay? And I'm glad the candidates are here because that is something that we have to do. We have to articulate that. We have to bring that forward. Okay? And when you go into a negotiation, the other side, they will say, that's your job to figure that out. Well, it is our job. We have to figure that out and bring that into the discussion as we talk about the land and where money gets used. And so I want to bring that forward because I think there's a couple things that we'll talk about in detail. I can see Dr. Robinson is presenting it as the information item. But really, there's a discussion on who will be in the working committee, but also what are the expectations relative to the board. The board needs to set up key parameters to that negotiating committee, because that is something we do here around the table. And we'll go into more details on that, but I think that's our opportunity to make the case of where we fight and where we articulate a need for these education dollars versus trying to simply move quickly. We appreciate the need to move quickly. We would appreciate the understanding that our role is to make sure that everything in terms of money that we can bring forward, whether it be advocacy, whether it be repurposing anything, whether it be a bus or a desk or a computer, and also repurposing land, is well articulated as we proceed through it. So I'll turn that over. Actually, we'll turn it over to the public comments.
We have students, yeah.
Yes, we'll start off with students. Come on up, please.
So, as our last major event in the Senate, we're planned our speak out. I told you the date is again May 15th, and there are posters around the school so far, so we're trying to get good attendance so students can just like discuss with you guys, discuss with each other, and come up with different ways that we can deal with grading policy and like problems that they're facing.
And also the 2016-2017 Senate, we just had our last meeting the Monday after break, so 2 Mondays ago. And we just held elections for the new Senate, and we're still waiting to hear those results. So at the next board meeting, we should have the new Board of Ed reps with us. So we don't know them yet, but they should be here at that point. And because it's the end of the year, we have our banquet, and we'd like to invite all of you. We hope you can all come. It's going to be a lot of food, which is always a good thing. Yeah, so I think it's on May 24th. All the information is on the sheet, but we'd love to have you.
Where is the Speak Out? What time?
Speak Out, I believe it's in the Little Theater during lunch
Yeah.
period.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
And, sorry. I've been remiss, I did not do the standard writing, declaration, as I see one person in the public ready to speak, but this is an opportunity for the public to address the Board of Education. Are there any residents and tenants? If so, please complete the comment form. The board will not address specific comments, but ask for your name and address in the event follow-up is necessary. We remind residents of the public comment portion of our meeting is only one item in the long agenda. We therefore ask each speaker be as succinct as possible and that remarks be limited to 2 or 3 minutes. We also expect the residents to speak in a respectful, courteous manner so as to model proper civility, decorum for our students. Residents may also contact the board by email at boe@shenan.org. All questions come into the Office of Public Information Officer and are shared with the board and/or superintendent as appropriate. Policy questions concerns are typically addressed by the board president. Operational questions concerns typically addressed by the superintendent and/or designee. So I see one member coming up, so please come on up.
Evening. I'm Alex Blaze, and here as a resident. I was really pleased to see that an update on the land issue was on tonight's agenda. And while I wasn't sure what that update would include before your comments, I'm really happy to hear it sounds like you're going to be moving forward as a group on appointing a couple of members to a subcommittee or a small working group to begin working with the town. Just in recognition of the fact that the referendum is, it's now 5 weeks since the referendum. I know, you've addressed kind of working quickly and some of the issues around that, but I think there's some concern from the public, particularly, in conversations I've been having of late, that perhaps these past 5 weeks, while there has been some action taken, it hasn't necessarily, the time hasn't necessarily been used as efficiently as possible. So I'm glad to hear that the working group option is hopefully going to be pursued, and it's then also my request or my hope that that working group, not only will they kind of get to work immediately with the town, I know at the last board meeting it was discussed that ideally there would be a fall, maybe October, November vote on this issue. And, with that in mind, time really is of the essence. So I would hope that, in recognition of some of the difficulties that surround and the complicating factors that surround this issue, that, work would hopefully be as quick and efficient as possible toward a resolution. And additionally, that working group would come back and report back not only to the board, but to the broader public at each board meeting until a resolution is found. I think that would go a long way in terms of restoring some of the public's trust in the fact that the board really does value communication with the public, engagement, and ultimately transparency. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
My name is James Rule, and I live at 168 Wooddale Drive, Falston Lake, actually Clifton Park, New York. I am here to read a statement which is now being disseminated among the members of the board. Sometimes.
Yours too. That was in the back.
Okay. I stumble and fumble, so you can read along with me. Assembling a negotiating team is a prerequisite to any ensuing negotiations for the transfer of 34 acres to the town. The structure, personnel, and support for this team by both the school district and town boards should be announced before the May 16th school district election in order not to have this issue impact the vote on the school district's budget, which I support. In order to treat the transfer of this property properly, it is necessary to adopt the vision that this parcel is not just an isolated piece of property. The main parcel has future relationships to surrounding properties and potential as an eastern anchor for the entire public land complex that extends from this parcel to Town Hall. The initial physiography and negotiations should consider, at a minimum, the following issues for the future use of the parcel and its environs. The objective is to assemble and then transfer the town a sufficiently large commodity of interconnected open land to the town that has immediate and extensive short-term potential for passive recreational trail-based recreation, has long-term potential for more extensive development given additional area, the parcel and its environs, considerations. First, a seeker review, area planning process, and finally, investment possibilities for the town. And I want to editorialize here. The short-term objective means use right off the bat. The long-term objective is a responsibility for the town, which has to go through an extensive process for any development or investment. But the point is to have sufficient footprint and land area to accomplish both objectives. Following are examples of issues that should be considered to accomplish this assembly and transfer task. All parties involved in negotiations take an extensive tour of the 34 acres and its environs before any negotiations proceed. And I personally will volunteer to lead anybody through this complex. I am very familiar with it. I have skied it, I have walked it, I have biked it. It is a beautiful place and anybody wants a tour that is involved in this process. Give me a call. I'll make time to take you through it. Exact maps may be obtained from the town of Clifton Park or Bill Connor and be provided to the negotiating team. This is a physical exercise of what is there and what is around there. And that should be the first priority in terms of any type of scrutiny. Exact boundaries surveyed and marked for additional site visits. Access and use of the following trails as part of the transfer package. Nature trail from the library trail to the main parcel. If you've been in the parcel, you'll see that people have organized a nature trail with signs. That should be part of this complex and not just be external to the main parcel. Undeveloped right-of-way trail from Collins Park to the main parcel. Connecting that public commodity of Collins Park to the main parcel is vital to have extensive use. Relationships, role, public use, and access of the athletic fields. I have that in quote. At the southern edge of the parcel, northern boundary of Shenendehowa Elementary School. Not just a parcel, it's the land also around it. Potential parking on and access from town land off the west side of Maxwell Road, south of the public safety complex to the main parcel. There is surrounding town land that can provide parking right now if it's coordinated with the consideration of the physiography of what's for sale. Role and relationship of private lands to the main parcel on the eastern side of Maxwell Road, north of Bentley. Public access from Maxwell Road to the main parcel on school district land. This access adjoins town land to the north. This was a piece that was put forth in the proposal by BBL, and it is a connector that is vital to the main parcel and to Maxwell Road. It's a small piece, but it's a very, very important connection. And lastly, the price for the assembled land package to be the last item on any negotiating agenda. You don't set the price for a house until you have all the incidentals considered. And I please ask the negotiating board to approach the process in that way, a logical process of filling the commodity before you set the price. Thank you very much. And again, I am here representing myself, not any organization of which I am affiliated with. This is Jim Rule talking, nobody else. Thank you very much.
Any other comments from residents? Okay, let's turn over to the superintendent.
Sure, thank you very much, Mr. President. Just 4 quick comments, more so point of information. On Thursday, we'll have committee interviews of 4 candidates. You should have a packet of information on the candidates in front of you. On the 19th, we hopefully, if Thursday goes well, and I say this is a process, and the process doesn't end until it ends, because anytime the process, I kind of use the analogy of putting the brakes on the train if it's about to derail. Our objective is to get a quality candidate, and my objective, and I'm going to personalize this to myself as superintendent, is to make a recommendation to the Board of Education that ultimately I would have strong confidence in the individual to fulfill the role of the high school principal, recognizing that if it doesn't happen, the burden is on me to remedy the situation. So we go through that process and have some final interviews on the 19th. If everything goes well, and bring a recommendation to the board on June 6th. So some packets of information is in there for your edification. Second point, on this Saturday, we have a community conversation at Cheryl's Lodge in the Half Moon Heights neighborhood of Cemetery Road. It's always a great opportunity to be specifically in that neighborhood, and hopefully we get a lot of residents from the neighborhood to be in attendance. So we're looking forward to that community conversation. Also on Saturday, we're hosting here at the high school. Hopefully the weather will be favorable. The Special Olympics, we have done that for several years now because of the proximity of various venues, be it the pool, the gymnasium, things of that nature. So it allows us to host the Special Olympics. It's been a great opportunity, and I say that if you ever want to come and be inspired, come to that event, because it's pretty amazing when people have no limits because of what people may see otherwise as barriers. Great, pretty inspiring event. So I encourage you to attend that on Saturday as well. Mrs. Mylod will be kicking that off in my stead, because I'll be at the community conversation at the same time at the start of that event. But typically in the past, I would leave there and come to the event afterwards just to walk around and be in the midst of some tremendous athletes. It's a wonderful, wonderful event. Great way to spend the morning if you have the time on this coming Saturday. Mr. Tortolot will come forward and present the fire inspection. And not to put a dimmer on this, but the last time we had a fire inspection, we had another great gentleman who was inspector. Unfortunately, the gentleman passed away since. We, as a school district, we sent a note to the family expressing condolence. He was a great guy. Just met Mr. Rossi tonight. And so he's also another great guy who takes care of the details when we look at fire inspection. And I share this because the board this has become a routine, and it's not a routine for us. It's an opportunity to get an outside eye to really look at some things and say, okay, yeah, there's some things that we can do, shuffle, but more importantly, try to see if there are things that could be potentially grave risk or harm to our students and staff. And so we go through this process, and Jay goes through this process pretty thoroughly and completely with our fire inspector. And so while it may seem pretty routine at the end of it, it's a pretty extensive process. So Mr. Tortolot, if you want to talk about that and then go from there.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Yes, the annual fire inspection was conducted during the April 24th week. We inspect the schools on 11th month cycle, so we're always seeing it on the previous month and next year, so it always gets a different look during the school year. We inspected 44 buildings during that time, and the summary for the board that we put together was I included this year all the buildings that we inspected, not just the ones that we found violations, to give you a good overview of the amount of non-violations as well in every structure that we did inspect. Again, we didn't find any major issues, and Mr. Rossi will go into some detail on some of these other non-compliance issues that we did find. Some of the things that we are going to target and improve on is, first of all, our evacuation mapping. In many of the areas, we did recognize that we have different types of evacuation mapping. Either they're posted above the door of a classroom or on the side of the door. Nothing
more or less consistent. So we want to tackle that, and get that more consistent with level of the door handle, either side of the door handle. We have different geographics in every classroom or room, so we got to look at that. Shattucon has been completed, Carragona Rent is being done, and we're just creating more maps as we go along. The other thing that we're targeting is emergency lighting. We have many different kinds of emergency lighting, especially in high school east. We're having difficulties with them, so we're replacing them. Even if we look at a battery cost for maybe $10, we can buy a whole LED light for $35, which can last much longer in our burn time as well. The other thing we're looking at is just we come across some housekeeping issues with our boiler rooms and mechanical rooms, so that's just a neaten up type area. And Mr. Rossi will go into some detail on some of our inspections and talk about a little new code too that we encountered this year.
Thanks, Jay. Actually, the district did very well. I did perform the inspection last year. Joe was sick that year, and unfortunately, like Dr. Robertson said, he had passed away this past year. Joe did a great job.
Could I suggest you get closer to
Yeah.
the mic? That
Yeah.
people at home might be watching.
Oh, yes, but we performed the inspection like Jay said. We went through all the buildings in the district, all the sheds, storage sheds. The district staff, Jay's staff, maintenance staff, teaching, and the principals of all the buildings were very cooperative. Anything we came across that could be corrected was corrected right away, if it could be. The list of things that you have in front of you that Jay provided are very minor compared to what we see in a lot of buildings. So the district is on a good avenue of keeping the students and staff safe. And that's our job with SED is to come around and make sure that that's happening. Now next year, as part of they revised their schedule in January, and one of the new codes they have is going to affect probably a lot of the elementary grades. It's on putting it on your walls, teaching materials and artwork. They're limiting it to 50% of the wall space. So if you're looking at one wall on this side, 50% of that area can only be covered with any artwork or teaching material. And I know elementary grades use 99% plus.
So what's the reasoning for that? What's the brains behind that?
Well, I don't really know what their reasoning was. It is in the state fire code, and they review the state fire code and bring it forth into the schools with SED. I think some things will come up. I know teachers will bring it up of how teaching materials are laid out in rooms for teaching purposes. And that was already brought forward to Jay and I as we went around. I did not enforce that this year, though it's in the code. There's only a couple of months left of school. It's kind of crazy to have people start taking down teaching material and artwork that's in the class. But next year, we're looking forward to trying to get them acclimated to using that 50% rule. It's always been in the corridors a 20% rule. So it's kind of gone into now the classroom using a 50% rule. We'll see how it works out. But I'm not going to go around with a tape and say you're 2 inches over, but we're going to be looking for that, around 50, 60% of the wall space to be used.
So you said hallways was 20% corridors?
Always 20%, always has been. That's why a lot of places, the
Mount
maintenance-
bulletin boards. Yeah, Mount to set, the designated areas.
Yeah,
Okay,
that'll
gotcha.
give you your 20%. They
Gotcha.
calculate it out so that they try to keep it within those bulletin boards. And that's basically, yes.
I noticed on the cover letter, it referenced corrective actions and dates completed were indicated, but I didn't see any dates, so what does that mean? I don't mean for Jen to stop, but are they all done?
They will be by June 1st. Yes. June 1st is when we have to submit the fire reports to SED. By then they will be, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And even if they're not, they list them, if they send them into SED, these are all minor violations that get a 30-day
Action.
leeway
Gotcha.
to take care of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jay, I have a question. It relates to fire, but not to the inspection. Just the other day, so there was a transformer fire here. Those aren't the kind of things that are inspected probably. Those are those things that just happen.
We do look at them to make sure that there's no combustibles around them.
Yep.
That they're protected if they're outside, so nobody runs into them, to cause some damage. We do look at everything.
Yeah, yeah. But we had an incident, right,
Yeah,
Jay?
we did.
And,
Yeah, in fact,
we
there's-
kicked on to,
There's a write-up in Friday Bulletin coming on that too.
Okay,
Because now
okay.
we have some resolution, and so I could give you the whole
no,
picture.
no, that's okay. No, that's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
And Jay, actually, I just want to thank you for giving us the extensive list of all the buildings, and everything, because I thought it also put in perspective how minor some of the non-compliant issues are, and especially the extent, the smaller scope of it. So I think that was very helpful to see that. So kudos to you and all the staff for really being on task and making sure our kids are safe. So thank you.
Well, Mr. Casey, thank you for bringing that up about the transformer fire, because I know that August Freeman is in the audience, and he was a great part of that, like at between 1:30 and 4 o'clock in the morning, of handling the issues and getting electricians here and getting situations set, so sixth grade wing could be back in action by, what, 4:32, I think, Augie? But, appreciation goes out to August. Great. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Want me to just keep-
Sure.
So, under the other item that we have on the information item is actually the respective meeting dates for the Board of Education. One of the things that we go look at a school calendar, and there's certain times dates have to change because of where holidays falls and things of that nature. But for the most part, we try to have a consistent sequence to board meeting dates. And so the dates are there, and it's important at this time of the year because these dates drive other things that happen within the district, because as much as we try to avoid, but sometimes it's unavoidable to have other major events in the district at the same time that we have board meetings. Recognizing we always have conflicts with sports, but we try to avoid that as much as possible, but it's hard to say we're going to keep board meeting Tuesdays sacred, because the reality of it is we have many, many, many events taking place all the time, but certainly try to avoid it so board members can have a chance to attend events as much as possible. So this is the sequence of the board meetings. Two things I want to point out. The July, August dates, the summer dates. There's been, last summer, we spent a lot of time talking about the goals process. And if you see here, it's broken out 2 different occasions to have 2 different smaller retreats instead of a longer one. And we always know that summertime, regardless if we have the dates in advance, there are always going to be conflicts with people's schedule and things of that nature. But we try to have at least 2 different opportunities early in July to have some preliminary conversation around the goals. And the July 11th date is important from an administrative perspective because we have our administrative goals discussion on the 18th, 19th. So it's great to have some board feedback or going into that discussion versus the opposite way of having administrative then having board discussion after. So I'll be, quite frankly, depressing the board on trying to get down to some specifics in terms of some of the things that we'll be sharing on the 19th to get the board feedback on some of those type things, so we're all on the same page. And then on the August 22nd one is where we come back with a more refined document, if you will, so that the board can see it. That's also we do a public presentation of what we call the summary document of our district goals. So it's 2 different sequences. I just want to point that out to the board's attention. This is the summertime becomes an important piece for that, and the reorganization meeting is a legal stipulation that we need to have that meeting during a certain time period as well. So otherwise, we try to be diligent with the sequences of the meeting and trying to get this out as early as we can. And so tonight is on the agenda for the board to adopt, recognizing that if circumstances arise that we need to make a change, certainly it's an action of the board, but certainly try not to do it as much because there's a lot of other planning that goes around the board meeting dates. So we could I could address questions people have now or later on when the action item is on the agenda, if there are any questions.
Yeah, the only question I have relates to the August 22nd meeting, just in terms of, does that give you enough time, for those late kind of appointments kind of thing? Because the next meeting we have, we're in school, right?
Yeah.
Whether the 29th would work better or not, I just raised the question.
Well, I mean, sometimes we will, as I said, as much as we think we can plan things out, we always, particularly staff, and I'm thinking you're referring to staffing.
Exactly.
Inevitably, we always have that, oh, well, I'm not planning to return, particular people who may be out on leave, and we find ourselves scrambling. We try not to have as much scrambling. I think because we start some of our processes so early now, or much earlier than in past years, we try to resolve a lot of the staffing, ideally by mid-July, because we want people on board. However, when we have those situations, we do the appointment with the retroactive date if we need to, because we've had people who we bring on board, and the next board meeting is after school start, but they're there on that first day of school, and we do the retroactive appointment. We certainly try not to do that, and in those instances, the board would provide a heads up to say, hey, we'll have these retroactive appointments to this date as much as possible. So this has worked for us for the most part, because we use these dates to schedule interview processes, for example, to saying that if the board meeting is this, we need to have final interviews by this date so that information can be transmitted to the board. So this drives, as I said, a lot of processes.
Any other comments or questions? Board meeting date?
Thank you. That's all for me.
Okay, I'll speak really kind of intro on the land sale discussion. As we talked about this, did get comments back from board members, one-to-one, some concerns on, how this working committee is going to work, what's its purpose, okay? Not expected to be negotiating at that meeting. It's expected to be assisting the town with interpreting what we're presenting as our parameters. It's to help facilitate how the town proposes to us, because the sequence that we saw, and I'm going to refer back to this chart, it's like a 1, 2, 3. Town makes the formal proposal. Okay, they haven't done that yet. They sent a letter with a price, so that did get presented by them as the intended buyer. And number 2 is our considerations as a board. How do we manage to that? Okay, because we're basically going to vote on their proposal, and then if it goes out as a public referendum. So it's a 3-step process: town proposal, we then craft the referendum, and then it goes to the voters to then yea or nay agree to it. This is not a non-permissive referendum that we had on the 4th of April, where people are given the opportunity to basically slam on the brakes and say, no, you're not going to do that, school district. This is a referendum where it's, here's the proposal, voters will vote for it or decide to not vote for it. So different type of decision. Okay, so that's going to be more of a positive referendum. So we have to honor this as this is not something that, we decide the proposal. We can, amplify what our, considerations are. We can talk about our expectations. But they have to come to us and say, I'm proposing this, and formally say, this is what the town of Clifton Park wants to do. The committee is not there to authorize a deal, not there to say, okay, no problem, we'll take care of it. No, this is the committee saying, okay, we're representing the board and the board's parameters to say, and they may come back with a question that we haven't considered, and we owe it to them respond back to that, because this is something we have to show consideration to the fact that they operate differently than we do. If we bring forward a dollar amount, that's kind of, right now in parameters, I would say that's something that's more broad and hypothetical. As my personal concern, and this is not as board president, but as one person, as one of 7, I'm concerned about the future climate in terms of education dollars. And I can speak to that in more detail later on, but I'm concerned that, we are in this watershed in terms of where we get money from federal and state. And so that's how we'd want to present this in terms of a working committee. The one thing I think people are interested in, you mentioned it, Bill, at the last board meeting, is the composition of the board. And typically, the composition of the working committee. Okay, so some discussion individually with board members on how we'd want to do this. A key driver, I think, is how we approach this in terms of policy. Okay. I've been pretty quiet on this as board president, but I feel that some of the considerations are from a policy perspective. The president does need to be here, because that is the task I'm charged with, is to represent the board. Bill, you've also presented the concerns that you brought forward. I think it is worth, as we talk about this thing in the entirety, that you be there along with Todd. So we would like to think of having myself, Todd, and Bill in recognition for, I think, the work that you put forward and that you've asked for. And I think that the community has brought forward and said, you know, we'd like to have it managed this way. At the same time, the back end of this, or the other part of this, is what are the specific parameters that we'd want to bring forward as a board? I think the key thing, and I don't intend to be rude to Mr. Rule, but my thoughts are is that, you know, you have to set parameters on the price. The town has already done that on their behalf as a buyer, and we need to treat this as something that we have an interest as a municipality to represent our concerns on the costs and the price, and also potentially structure it as we've had in the past with a cash amount, and then potentially, if it can be agreed upon, a value-added portion, discussing things like potentially sharing fields, potentially sharing field maintenance. If we can agree on that in a way that is understandable, we could also build that into the parameters. So I kind of see it as two things. I mean, my thoughts are discussing on where's that price range.
Do you want to do probably the easier one first?
Yeah, the easy one, okay. Good point.
The composition.
Composition.
First of all, again, for my own purposes, I'm making the assumption that myself, Mrs. Wetmore, will be a part of this working committee, and I didn't want to make a wrong assumption, so I'm throwing it out to the board as well as we think about the working committee.
Okay. So thoughts on composition of it?
Of the working committee?
Yes.
Okay. I do have a few questions for you, Bob. So Bob, Todd, and Bill, so will you three have a discussion before you all go into, we as a board have a discussion before the three of you go into this discussion, and will you all be on the same page when you have those discussions? We can't go in with Todd saying one thing, Bob saying another, and Bill's going the other way.
Mm-hmm.
So I would expect that we're all going to be on the same page.
I would say that the parameters part of this is the board's direction, our quote, marching orders as a board to the three committee members.
My second question is that Dr. Robinson just said if Dr. Robinson and Kathy are there, what exactly are their roles? Are they basically just, are they listening? Are they becoming part of the discussion?
I would say
Kathy, I know, but Dr. Robinson.
Listening but clarifying. There may be something that comes up where there's a question or
Educational law or something like that or whatever?
Yeah. I mean, we have no idea what the town may requires or ask for.
I just want to understand what everybody's role is.
Okay.
So can I interject a bit? I mean, I last time we had, and I used the term working committee, and very specifically used the term working committee because the board, it's not a meeting of the board, the Shen board, it's not a meeting of the town board, it's a working committee where we're talking, clarifying information and getting information, and then that information is coming back to this board to have further conversation if necessary. I can't speak of how the town would function, but so so that's when I used the term last week, a working committee, is that sense of how do we try to, if there are questions that the town may have and are issues that we want to ensure we highlight as on behalf of the district, that those things are clearly articulated, and whatever those conversation points are, we also then, quite frankly, provide an update here to the board as a whole. So everyone is on the same page, not only the board as a collective, but the public as a collective. And so I kind of foresee that being the case where we'll provide just summary updates as we go along.
I think you're right, though. Absolutely has to be the same page.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a given.
Okay.
That's my understanding too.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Sorry.
I would say, I appreciate the listening, but I've been in meetings with you and Kathy in particular where your perspective shared with has kind of shifted conversation and thought. And I would want this group to be open to that, that feedback from you as well. I think that you and Kathy have an outlook about finances, district goals, and so on, that's valuable information to whoever is on this group. And so my hope would be that you would not feel restricted in contributing in that exchange, realizing that it's up to the 3 board members or however many people there are, to come back and share that with the board and share that with the public. You would share it as well. Is that what we're striving for?
I think that's appropriate. I mean, we should get the perspectives from Oliver, Kathy, how does this work? How, and from how they live with it, they work with it every day. Did you object to that?
No, I think Dr. Robinson, I always say this on every aspect that we discuss, I think his expertise is invaluable. And I mean, obviously, educationally, the bar is still high for him. But I think the perception sometimes, and I'm being honest here, and please don't love it. I think we need to, it's board-driven. Dr. Robinson's there. I mean, a great resource, and yes, his perspective is highly regarded. But I think the perception should be that it is board-led. And if you're leading the discussion, Bob, like I said, the 3 of you are on the same page doing that. So, you know what I mean?
Go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, I want to be careful, because I don't want to get thrown off this committee. But I want to be, but you've got to look at this from the other side as well. I just raised this issue. I don't know what the answer is, but the school district shows up with 5 people to have a working committee. We own the land, so that's, I guess, possession is 9/10 of the law, right?
I heard that 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So we own the land.
We own
right?
the land. We own the land. But if we're serious about trying to make an agreement, because I think the public has, I was going to nudge, they've pushed us in that way, then it has to be a working relationship as well. So here's why I'm asking the question. So if the town says, we'll do, they've got a 5-member board, so they have to deal with the same issue we do. You don't want to have a quorum, and you want the ability, I think you're exactly right, you want the ability to say, we're here to listen, we're here to work this out, but we got to bring it back to home base, to the rest of the board. And I presume they have the same thing, but then the town attorney and the supervisor in this case is the chief administrator in the town, as well as an elected official. So I just think we need to be sensitive to not being overwhelming on this and giving an impression we want this to work. And I think it can work. I just say that, but we have to be aware of the graphics on this, how it looks from the other side, and I think we need to be sensitive to that, and I think that's a little bit where you're going. If it's elected board to elected board with support around the table, then I think we can get there.
So,
Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't want to
understand that. So something I'll do, and hopefully be able to get a response back to share with the board in Friday Bulletin, is actually reach out to Supervisor Barrett and ask if, for this, what's the composition of his group, so we're not making assumptions that is it board to board, or is it board to the supervisor, the planning, whatever, director, the lawyer, the this, and all of a sudden we're overwhelmed because they have all their legal egos at the table, and we're sitting there with nothing, so to speak, in terms of comparable feedback. So I'll do that and try to provide some context, if you will, to the board via email as soon as I get that information. Just you're right. So we know that at least all parties are coming to it with equal footing minimally, to have what we hope will be open dialogue and discussion. So I could certainly reach out and get that information to the board.
I don't really mind if the town has more people. It's not the bodies that matter so much to me as the representation. I feel confident in leadership being able to take care of, whatever comes up, or refer back to say, this is something that has to come to the entire board. That's how our policy works. However, the town's policy works, it's how one would presume that they're going to operate as well. So I guess I think it's more than fair to say 5 are coming. But I wouldn't necessarily think it has to be 5 and 5. Whatever, to move things forward, if they need 3, however many, whatever, it doesn't matter. Fair notice.
Richard.
Any other comments, questions on the working committee? Are we comfortable with myself, Mr. Gilbert, Mr. Casey, representing it this way?
I agree.
Okay,
fine.
so we're comfortable with composition. The second part is the quote marching orders from the board. What are the parameters? What are the expectations? Knowing what we know now, the town has presented a letter with their understanding of what they would offer. What we've learned over the last couple of months is to what's the ability of the land to be sold. How the community respects the land, I think, is also very important. And I think one of the key things is understanding sort of a price range, factoring in not only a cash payment, but also something above and beyond in terms of combining services, or sharing resources like fields or field maintenance. I think in the past there has been discussion around that, and that's something people are interested in seeing. I think that's something that sort of forms, almost 10, 15 years ago, before I came here, there was discussion that would be a great thing to do between town and district, and that offers the opportunity to sort of partner up that way. So are we comfortable with that type of an approach? With, saying, okay, there's a window of our expectation on price, okay, a top and a bottom, with the understanding that there would be a cash amount, and the town could either put it right at, very low relative to the window, but it could include a very large value proposition to bring forward something that would take the total cost reduction on our part to a better level. Are we okay with that type of amount, or that type of approach?
Bob, I guess I want to just take a step back, and I think at least I want to understand exactly what we're dealing with. What type of land, I mean, where do we want to go with it? What type of land do we want? You kind of want an end game, yeah, that you have and we'll discuss before you get there?
Yeah.
And wouldn't that kind of drive then the next piece of it? If we're talking about value?
Yeah. Well, we'd want to just give them an opportunity to present something above and
Okay,
beyond
you're
the
going to
cash
ask them,
advance.
okay, so
Okay,
you're letting them go first.
That would, in other words,
Gotcha.
we would say we would
Okay.
accept not just a cash amount, but if you said a cash amount plus something above and beyond that's tangible, understandable, and something that would reduce, our costs and our budget, we would definitely entertain that. That gives them some flexibility to bring that forward. But at the same time, we don't want to describe it too much and limit it to that, but it'd be more to say, you have this opportunity to manage it that way. Comment?
Can I want to be sure I'm understanding what you're saying. So just the way you just said it, that we would be willing to entertain cash and consideration with an undefined amount, is that?
We would like to also discuss an amount. First, we want to talk about the cash and consideration.
Okay, so then if there's a dollar amount established out there, help me understand what is the precedent for doing that? Where does that lead us in future discussions, negotiations, contracts, and so on? I know that if somebody was selling their house and they told the prospective buyer, we won't take anything less than $250,000, that's what they're going to get, is an offer of $250,000. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So where does that leave us in terms of going forward with finances? Is that going to be an expectation going forward, that when we negotiate a contract, we're going to show our cards?
I would say that, This is a very unique negotiation because we're constrained to these laws. And these all involve land sale, okay? Whereas a lot of the other negotiations we do, whether it be for buses or contract negotiations, they have a different set of laws, and we actually have a different attorney managing, because I almost envision this as, the town, the land attorney versus negotiations for contracts is another attorney and another set of laws, because they're very subtle and unique, and we need that expertise to explain that to us.
I think that's a really important piece to lay out there, that this is this. This should not be superimposed on any other future actions that the board or the district would take. Does that make sense?
It does. Can I offer a comment, and certainly board prerogative? The uneasiness that I'm feeling right now is that we may be trying to micromanage the thinking of the town, versus if the board has, the working committee has the, if you want to say now, consensus agreement on having discussions surrounding both cash and tangible consideration, that may be all what's necessary now. And then once there's a proposal from the town, then the board could, as a collective, could then discuss to say, is this proposal something that we think is viable? And taking a much more logical sequence step in the conversation point, because I think otherwise it's being almost somewhat premature in some of the conversation points. I think about this when we have when we have negotiations, collective bargaining negotiations, and we come to the board in executive session. We don't ask for exact amounts. We just ask, okay, here are some considerations that we would like to pursue, so to speak. And this is not even as exacting as that, but I'm trying to use that as a parallel to say, if this working committee goes into it and having a conversation with the town to say, the town come back with proposal X dollars and say, and we're willing to do this, there should be a high degree of comfort for this working committee to say, okay, this could be something we could have some discussion on to see if we can come to something where the town can then bring forth a formal proposal in the sequence of things. But because we don't know what the town is thinking, it's a little bit, I think at this particular juncture, I think at some point there will need to be that very specific conversation to say, is this a palatable proposal or not? And that's where I think the board can then really hone in on price points and value add concessions. I mean, does that make some sense?
I think, though, there are some, to give some guidelines as to the kind of things that would fit. I think the value-added piece is really important here. But not just because of the value, but because of the ultimate long-term use between the school and the community. I think that's, something that is a parameter that I would urge, and I think we've talked a little bit about this, is looking at the potential, and we've asked the town for this before, so this isn't a surprise. In fact, they raised it early on in discussions previously, is the shared use of grounds. I think the public expects that we're working with the town, or we can work with the town, and we can get on the same page and for the common good. And I think the common good would be represented by something that would show some shared use and maintenance, sharing of cost, sharing of responsibility, sharing of the property, maybe, crazy thing, sharing the 60-foot margin we had there, which
The buffer area.
yeah, the buffer area. If you're not going to have a big building on the other side, maybe that's something that fits into. But come back to us with something creative that includes shared use of facilities, particularly grounds, because we're hearing from it's the same kids, whether they're in their junior league over there or they're running outside from Chattacon and Aranjan for their gym class. And putting a value on that. I I mean, that has a value if you come back to us. So give us an estimate of it. I mean, I think it's not, we're not saying what the estimate should be. The presumption is they're going to have to, and they've said they would like to start a process. So that there's some cost involved with starting that process, bringing in a consultant, that kind of thing. I mean, we're not saying what that is, but what's the number going to be? I think the public expects I think they understand the town of Clifton Park isn't going to jump here and do we're going to do this price, and we're going to spend $3 million, and, in 2 years, you're going to have a full-blown park. The town of Clifton Park has traditionally done things on a phased basis. So what are they talking about from an initial phase? When you buy this property, you buy the liability. So the liability includes signage, making sure that, the kids have made the trails. I mean, they can bring all the consultants they want in. The kids have figured out how to get through this property and to get to places. But there's some value on that. The initial piece that they'd have to spend. We're not telling them what that number is, but think that way. I mean, that's a parameter that we would consider, right? Not that we'd approve. We'd consider it as part of the proposal process. And then there's some other parameters that we're very clear on. Payment at closing.
Yeah.
Full payment at closing, right? That's a parameter.
I mean,
The
certainly,
law,
the law
the
says
law's
it.
clear,
Yeah.
and I think, Bob, you hold up the chart, which has the two pieces of law, but we're really talking about a section 405, right? Which is, we have the flexibility on price, but we have the responsibility, as you point out, to maintain an educational system here. So we've got some responsibility. But I think some of these things we can lay out initially just as some broad parameters. This could be a consideration. I'm not saying it has to be included, but we're tipping our hands some. I mean, Gary described it when he was here as, I don't like doing this because it's like, showing your poker hand and not seeing the other hand. But in a way, this is a public process we're talking about, and the public has spoken. So I think there are some of these kind of considerations that we can mention without putting a number on them. And they've given us numbers in the past. Okay, come back. Let's refine this process. Let's see if we can't get to a common ground.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think it makes sense. Now, one of the things that we thought, there was other submissions from board members to have a specific price range. You're sort
I
of
don't know.
saying,
Yeah, I don't know what those are.
okay, so some of them, some folks thought maybe, and I thought, from my perspective, we should probably put up a price range out there, significantly more closer to the 1.5, okay? However, I'm sort of seeing looks here saying that's probably not a good idea.
No, Bob, I just want to go back to my initial conversation, and Billy kind of touched on it, and maybe I'm totally misreading this. What are we selling? That quality of land, you kind of got to know what you're selling, and
So I'm not sure what you mean by the question, Dana.
Okay, I keep going back to this acronym, seeker. I know we're not going to do a seeker on it, but hear me out for a second.
Okay.
Once you bring the Army Corps of Engineers in,
We actually have done that.
you brought the Army Corps of
We,
Engineers.
as a part of our appraisal
Brought the
process,
EC in.
we had to have a complete assessment of the property to have what's the valuable nature of the
We
property.
did a seeker?
We even have soils analysis of the property.
We did a seeker.
But so you use seeker in a whole different context. And because we do seeker things on construction because it's a visual, it really visually impair the current existence. So there's seeker is going to different types of detail. So one of the things then that I need to do for the board is actually get that appraisal document and pull out some of those pieces. And even there's a soils analysis, I forget what a state agency that we have, that shows actually the moisture. Don't quote me on the term because I'm not engineer. So that's there, and that's why we know the actual value, buildability of the land. And this even started from when we even constructed Shattuckon, and we started saying, okay, so it's not necessarily the 34 acres. It's a matter of, okay, the acres is kind of, if you want to say, divided by that strip of wet that runs through, and so there's like 12 over here and about 20 plus on this side. And so when we think about building a school, The question is, if we were to build a school on any portion of that, the mitigating cost to have continuous acreage becomes so high price for us. That's what made it cost prohibitive for the school to construct a school on the property. And I said school versus a non-student house facility. So I could certainly provide that, and the town has all the same information because we went through some of the same pieces when we did the rezoning of the property to go from what it was to now TC3, I think it is. So there's a lot of analysis. So the town knows exactly what they're buying. We know exactly what we're selling, and that's where it comes from, that piece of it. And so I certainly understand what your piece is, and
This is the first time.
Yeah.
Can I tell you? We may have touched upon it in other conversations, but I don't, and maybe I wasn't on the board then, I don't know.
No, you weren't,
This is the-
actually.
Okay, so I kept asking, and thank you very much, because this is the first time that I'm hearing that. So if you can provide us with that kind of, I think there's community members that would probably enjoy knowing that too, maybe.
Sure.
Maybe. But, Bob, I am going to go with you on one other thing, because I know Dr. Robinson has heard from me several times on this too. Nationally, I am as concerned as you are. And I speak from the Medicaid side of things because I see health care every day. And especially with that. And, Medicaid dollars just do not touch health care. It touches everything in this state that we do, including education. So I got to tell you, I grow more and more concerned on pricing as well, and what our budget may look like. In fact, I asked him a couple days ago, maybe yesterday, I said, what does this budget look like if A, B, C, D happens? Concerned. That's a huge concern.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, with the health piece, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I
So,
would-
I'm not looking at you cross-eyed when you say $1.5 million.
No.
I'm not.
So you're comfortable with the range around $1.5 million, or?
Bob, and I've expressed this too in some emails back and forth. We know, the town knows a lot of this, as we said, previous discussions with them prior to the RFP, route that we went. They're fully aware of what the value is on that land, what the appraised value is. So they certainly know that. And my hopes would be because I know we need to wait to get a proposal really to act on anything. I know it's according to the law, education law, that we need to have something presented to us before we really can act on it. So with that said, I'm hoping that they'll come forward with a good faith, value estimate, what they would pay for that land, also taking into consideration, as we've discussed before, tangible, added value. So I'm hoping, taking that into consideration, they would, again, this is my perspective, that we shouldn't see anything less than $1 million from them, and deducting that added value from what the market value is for this piece of property or for the appraised property. Again, looking at that, maybe we do need to have some parameters, but maybe it's once we get the proposal, we can have more discussion on more of the in-depth parameters when you guys go in as a working committee. And like we said, the national, how things are looking. I work in human services, and like you said, it affects education, Medicare affects education, healthcare, you name it. That's also a concern. So I think it would be irresponsible for us to really look at anything much less than a bottom line of $1 million or thereabouts.
And everything's negotiable. I mean,
Right,
you
right.
don't know, everything's negotiable. I mean, but, that's, I'm not don't take my look at you that I think you're nuts. I don't.
Yeah. But I think we need to see what they're presenting first, really, before, 'cause it's almost like we're putting the cart before the horse. I'd like to see
Yes.
in writing from them.
Yeah.
And Dr. Robinson, I'm glad you brought that up with your comment about premature. It is, because I'm like sitting here listening. You'll notice I'm very much an observer, soaking it all in and then figuring it out to express it. But it's putting the cart before the horse. Let's see what they present. Let's make sure we're following the law to a T. And then go from there and set the parameters once we know that, and sending you guys in as our subcommittee to represent us well and to have clarification and then coming back to us. So that's just my perspective.
Any other comment?
I know we had talked about a range, and I understand, I guess I'm looking at both sides of it. When you sell a house, you don't just say, my house is for sale, make an offer. You put a value on that house, on what you want for it, and then people bid based on that, So part of me says that, but the other part of me, I do, I don't want to necessarily go and say we need a minimum of this yet. I think we do need to see we need to have an initial conversation with them and see where they're at, get a feel for it. We may be pleasantly surprised. We may not be. We don't know yet, but I want to go into this as open as possible, and get some sort of initial communication in my mind, then come back as a group with all 7 of us and say, okay, here's how the first meeting went. It was, rainbows and unicorns, or it was something much less than that. So,
I think it makes sense too, because in past exchanges with the town, there seems to be some difficulty understanding what we mean by consideration. So maybe outlining, not necessarily an expectation of a laundry list of considerations, but here's a list of potential considerations, possible examples that you might be interested in offering, that might help them move towards what we're looking for. And we did have, you and I, a conversation about range, and I had a range, but I've taken to heart what you said, and, we're probably better off not starting with that, and, let them come forward with what their offer is, and go from there.
I like what, Bill, you had made the comment about, maybe some things that we know we don't want as well. We don't want them going and buying the land from us and then reselling it, those types of things. So we have a list of
considerations.
Exactly.
So we have a list of considerations, but we also may have some other things that we don't want. We don't need any more soccer fields, stuff like that. So.
Come on, you create enemies, Todd, for the budget. We love soccer players and soccer fields.
Field hockey.
Okay.
Keep going.
Any other comments, questions? Do you feel comfortable presenting something,
So
summarizing this?
So what I'll do for Friday Bulletin, try to capture some of this, and also back to both Mrs. Blaber's point and Mr. Casey's point, highlight some tangible outlays, because I think that's the difference maker in this whole sequence. And I think that the working committee needs to be very clear with the town to say that we're looking at this as a value proposition. And the value proposition has a sizable cash outlay at closing. The value proposition also has some very tangible outlays. And the tangible outlays is not, the community will feel good. That's not a tangible outlay. That's not the tangible outlay is and part of it is saying for the town, what's the town intention of using the land? So for hypothetical, if the town say, well, right now for the next couple of years, we don't necessarily look to do anything different. And I think the gentleman who spoke before mentioned that kind of the passive use of okay, we understand that. However, part of whatever agreement is, if or when the town look to construct for recreational areas or those sequence, there will be utilization by the district for under certain terms, conditions, and not when it's negotiated 5 years ago as a part of the agreement now. So it's preserved as the agreement. And I say that because the board is having this discussion today may not be the board at some point down the road when something happened, nor the board here, the board at the town, and no one really knew actually what transpired back in 2017. So I think those things are important to codify in contract, in resolution, so everyone then knows what are those tangible outlays potentially, as well as immediately from the town use of it. Because we can't dictate what the town actually do with it, but we can certainly say, if these are things you plan to do, these are consideration that as a school district we need to have a commitment to, as much as we can commit future boards on certain things, as much as possible. So that's what I'm hearing from this group, and I'll try to capture that and share some ideas, and then ask if people have different ideas, so we can then hopefully put together, if you will, some talking points. Back to your point, Mrs. Stevenson. I keep saying Stevens. Yeah, I know. Still messing up. Mrs. Stevenson, about making sure that everyone's on the same page. So not only the working committee, but the entire board is on the same page. And knowing that the dynamics, we can't restrict the dynamics of conversations. Conversation is going to flow, but at least we have some key points that we have in common. I mean, does that make some sense? So I'll try to outline that and share it out to the board on Friday, and then at the same time, I'll reach out to Supervisor Barrett to kind of summarize this discussion and say, okay, would you have some sense of who might be represented in town? And I'll share that as soon as I get information with the board, as well as, to give some indication of what we see the first meeting as kind of talking through some stuff and getting some sense of what they're thinking. They get some sense of what we see as some allowables versus some, whoa, that's out of bounds kind of thing. I mean, is that fair enough? So we can make sure the conversation is productive. We don't want to go into a meeting where, people sit around the table looking at each other and it's not productive.
So what's our action tonight then? Are we going to vote on the committee members and that's our, how is that process?
Well, I mean, initially when we spoke board leadership, we thought, okay, if it became necessary to act on it, as we're having this conversation, it may not be necessary at this point because we're not going to necessarily commit to any real specifics in terms of dollar amounts and things of that nature. I think there's a clear unanimous consensus about the composition of the working committee on behalf of the board. I think there's consensus on being open to cash outlay as well as tangible concessions, if you will, as a part of a potential package. And so with that being said, I would suggest, and certainly board action, to not necessarily even take any formal action at this point because we don't have enough specifics per se, and I think the consensus of the board, and for the record, in the minutes to reflect that the board agreed that these 3 individuals will serve will probably suffice. So in case we need to go back and say, what happened, who decided when, was there consensus on this piece of it? And it seemed like there's consensus on that, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
I would just raise the question. I think we should consider an action item appointing the working committee. And I say it from this. I mean, I read the papers. So the Times Union today reports on a bunch of things related to the board election, and then it goes into the land thing, and the last comment from the town of Clifton Park is from the supervisor, I'm waiting. I think it behooves us to take an action appointing the committee. We've got
Keep it at that.
parameters and that kind of things. You don't have to wait any longer. Here we go. Let's sit down. Let's start working on this thing. Because I think the public expects it. So I would say that versus not necessarily doing the parameters. I think that's part of that general
Just appoint a working
considerations that we talked about.
Okay.
But the committee, we're ready.
So we can bring the board as a motion at item 10 under
Yes.
actions?
Yeah, that's what I'm
Okay.
suggesting.
Any other comments, questions? Okay.
Fair enough.
Let's move on to consent items. Treasurer's report. Motion from Mr. Casey, second Mr. Gilbert. Any comments or questions on the treasurer's report? All in favor? Okay. Minutes, I think everybody attended. Motion on both minutes. Mrs. Rajat, second Mr. Gilbert. Comments, questions? All in favor? Go to business items. The next year's Board of Education meeting dates. Motion, Mr. Casey, second. Mrs. Stevenson, comments, questions? All in favor? And next item is an appointment of Chief Inspector of Election and Inspectors of Election. Motion, Mrs. Blaber, second. Mrs. Rajat, comments, questions?
Are these substantially the same people who were with us all day in April?
A lot of them are, and just something I'm not sure if I even explained last time. There's a difference now. We have to go through the county.
Right.
Before we as a district hired, if you will, our local. Now we go through the county list, and it was interesting because some of those people they don't necessarily even district residents. And so they're kind of like, whoa, what is this about? Because school elections are so different than local municipal elections. And so we hope that's what we want. We want to get some of the same people because they've gone through it once now, and they have an appreciation of what a school election is like. No, so I mean, if people not want to work.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
It's a long day, and whoever they are.
So largely, most of them, if not all of them, are the same. So that's good.
All in favor? Appointment of a third-party administrator for workers' comp and disability. Motion for Mr. Casey, any second? Mrs. Stevenson, comments, questions? All in favor? And there's bids on copy paper and athletic field renovations. Motion, Mr. Gilbert, have a second. Mr. Casey, comments? All in favor? Contract summer feeding program. Motion, Mrs. Rajat, second, Mrs. Blaber. Comments, questions? Mrs. Blaber?
I had the opportunity to talk to Katie Headwell today about this program. What an outstanding idea. I mean, this is a breakthrough opportunity for students and the collaboration between Shen and Capstan and just assuring a level of security and quality for student meals throughout the summer. There are students, most likely anyway, and just to have that for them, I just think it's an amazing thing. And what she did to go out on a limb like that and bring that contract forward, I just give her all the credit in the world, and thanks to Kathy as well.
Okay. All in favor? And next item up is a contract on transportation. Motion, Mrs. Stevenson, second. Mr. Casey, comments, questions? All in favor? Next is a contract extension to Freeman Project Management. Motion, Mr. Casey, second. Mrs. Rajat, comments, questions?
Just a comment. Augie has been, and his company has been with us for a number of years, and it's a frustrating job. Frustrating because we have plans, we have money, and we're not getting approvals on moving things and keeping track of what goes in. It's a big deal as to what goes in, and whether it's the fire inspection or it's keeping track of what happens, pushing back in terms of change order request, change on contract, clarifications, all those things. I headed a group. I had 300 people in the field overseeing construction, and we got one, and his company doing it. And I think they do a great job for us, and it shows in the quality of the work that we get, and the fact that we don't come in here, Kathy doesn't have to come in here and say, we got all these changes we have to make. That takes quality control up front, looking at the documents, knowing the buildings, knowing the work, and then making sure it's in there right, and making sure the contractors understand, and holding the line. And I think Augie and company do a fabulous job on that. And especially working with our people. We're losing one of our persons this year, Ken Patnode, one of those persons who deals with these facilities. And I see Dave West is out there with his stick. He said if we don't approve his retirement, he's going to use that stick on us. But for all our systems kind of things, these are complicated. We have over 1 million square feet. It's complicated, and I think he does an excellent job.
So no pressure on Mr. Freeman to do an excellent job.
Keep it up.
Okay, any other comments, questions? All in favor? Okay. Item 8, fire inspection, annual visual inspection, motion. Mr. Gilbert, second. Mrs. Blaber, comments, questions? You had a great presentation on this. Thank you very much, and all in favor? And number 9, scholarships and local grant donations. Motion to bring this, Mrs. Blaber, Mrs. Rajat. Any comments, questions with gratitude?
With gratitude, question. ExxonMobil and Transborder Global Freight,
So the ExxonMobil Educational Alliance Program is where that donation came from, and they actually approached the school to see if we were interested, and it's earmarked for math and science in particular. And then the Transborder Freight was donated to the Adult Transition Program. We don't have any other information on that.
And while you're here, the one above that, Kipper's Gate, I was going to ask, what's Kipper's Gate? I don't know what. I'm not familiar with that.
I'm not familiar with that either, to be honest.
It's for the Shen Adult Transition Program as well. Yeah, I never heard of the group. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments?
With gratitude, right?
With gratitude, all in favor? Okay. And now number 10, approval of land sale working committee, and just leave it at working committee, not parameters yet. I think we discussed that very well. Motion to bring this, Mr. Casey, second, Mrs. Rajat. And can we have a review of the wording of this? Is this to form a working committee to work with the town on the land sale to include myself, Mr. Gilbert, and Mr. Casey. Okay, any comments, questions? Okay, all in favor? What?
With advisors.
Yeah, with district
Dr. Robbins.
officials.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor? All right. Let's move on to special education placements, and Mrs. Mylod.
Good evening. Any questions for me tonight on the recommendations?
Sorry.
Yeah, wait all that time, no
ask one
questions.
next
Yeah,
time.
It's okay.
Motion for Mr. Casey, can I have a second? Mrs. Stevenson, all in favor?
Thank you for all your work on it. I know how intensive it is, very intensive.
Item C, personnel, approval of staffing recommendations, transportation changes.
Good evening. We have one appointment tonight. Mackenzie Dillman is joining us in the technology department, replacing Mr. Young, who had passed away. And we had substitutes at that time. So he's a probationary teacher with a couple of years of experience. That's one of the appointments. And we have 4 retirements, and 2 of our retirees are here tonight. I would, if it's okay with the board, I'd like them to come up, because they've been here many, many years and many hours tonight. So we have 2 people are not here. Lorraine Bernard is retiring after 17 years as an elementary school monitor, and Cynthia Calicia is 17 years as an elementary school monitor. They are not with us tonight. We have Rich Bowers. He is retiring after 35 years with the district. His wife is also here with him tonight. He has done mail delivery, worked with IMS, worked in many capacities over the 35 years that he's been here. So for Rich would come up, and Mr. David West, our energy management supervisor, is retiring after 27 years. And he is here. He also does a lot of things with Odyssey of the Mind and is going to continue, has promised that he's going to continue with that. So as he makes his way up.
Okay, we'll approve it. Just stick away.
Congratulations. Congratulations to both, and 30 seconds on Odyssey of the Mind.
You want to have the board action first?
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Motion on this, Mr. Casey, second. Mrs. Rajat, any comments, questions? Mrs. Blair?
I'm sorry, I'm talkative tonight. The downside of technology for the board meetings was that Rich was no longer delivering with such, you could count on the time that he was going to bring the board packet, and I'm very grateful for you. Every time I see you on campus, you're smiling in buildings, out of buildings. It's the nicest thing. And Dave, when we were in such a financial crunch in the whole state, and you were all about shut the lights off, those tiny little things, people take for granted what you do, but not then. And I think that really sort of shined a spotlight on how important it is to be efficient with small matters so that they turn into big dollars. And I'm just very grateful for everything that you've done too.
Well, even though I am retiring, and I promised Jill I'd be succinct and only have a few comments, but she promised me I'd have a couple of minutes, not 30 seconds, for Odyssey of the Mind, but I'll put a plug in for that. And, for Naomi, because I know she put a lot of effort into Odyssey this year. And, thank you for being at our tournament this year and handing out some tournaments with us. That was big. That was huge, actually. The teams, we had 28 teams this year. It was great. And Dr. Oliver, Mr. Robinson, I should say, whatever you want to call yourself, it was great. You were there. For us, even when you were with Mohanson,
Yep.
I mean, you've been part of Odyssey with me for a long time.
Yes, has been.
And, I've been doing Odyssey for 23 years. And I've been doing Odyssey at the state level for 20 years and the World Finals level for 11 years. I'm just, even though I'm retiring from Shen, I'll not retire from Odyssey.
That's great.
I'll still be doing it. So, relax, Naomi. Even if you don't become part of the board, I'll still be with you. Okay? That's all I just want to say that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
We do need to vote. Motion for Mr. Casey, second Mrs. Stevenson, all in favor? Okay.
I told you I'd vote yes. He was going to beat me up with that stick.
That's all right. Thank you. That's fine.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. We'll be in touch for sure.
Oh, I'm sure you've got my contact. You've got my.
I've got you, I do, yeah. My wife's got the paper already, she wants to know, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, he was the nicest guy. Coming to the house, yeah.
Tell Augie, see, he must be.
There we go. He knows how to find,
Got
good,
him all the way
good
there,
to know,
yeah, there you go.
good to know.
Okay, moving on to policies and procedures. Is Mrs. Berman here?
No, Mrs. Carmen is absent, but in her stead, I'll be here to address if there are any questions that the board may have related to the policies for second reading.
Thank you for that additional language on 7618.
In fact, let me just, point 7618.
Introducing it like he would.
I just want to point out a change. The last time we met, there was a concern about the aversives language. It's a state regulatory language, and Mary, do you remember the?
It's the first paragraph. Yeah, it's the first paragraph.
Yeah, so
Aversive behavioral intervention.
so we added this last paragraph here, this last sentence. May only be authorized by the superintendent or designee under exceptional circumstances and with strict supervision, because it's one of those things that we don't want people to arbitrarily decide that they want to use it or otherwise. So it's the law allows for it under certain circumstances, but we want to make sure that there's a very strict process in order for that to occur. And we always superintendent or designee because, quite frankly, you're more likely to go through Mrs. Malad's office as a point of example. So we added that verbiage to that policy. Otherwise, there are no other changes.
Motion on this one, Mr. Casey, second, Mrs. Stevenson, comment?
On the reg for that language, I didn't see it. So if
We'll
it was
make sure.
intended for it to be in there, I didn't see any of the aversive language in the reg.
Okay. But so that we'll make sure that the board approving the policy, we make sure that consistent verbiage follows in the regs.
Any other comments, questions? All in favor? Okay. And now let's go to public comments. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to make a further comment? Okay. And let's go on to adjournment.
No, we got to executive session.
Oh, yeah, we got to do that. Any comments on future policy? Okay. So let's take a motion to adjourn, but then also go to executive session. So Mr. Casey, Mrs. Rajat, any comments, questions? All in favor? Okay. At this point, we'll go into executive session on the topic we talked about.
Shouldn't be, no. Yeah, that's what we just did.
Yeah. So,
No, that was.
It was together.
okay.
Let's get in trouble.
No?
I know.
Thank you.
I know. Thank you. I know. Silly you.
I don't know what's going on.
Just for me?
Cameron.
Ninth grade.
Yeah, it was because it must have been. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that can be, yeah.
Thank you.
Right here. Thank you.